The assembly hall was silent except for the faint creak of wooden chairs and the hum of the overhead fans. Hundreds of eyes stared forward at the principal, but in the middle of the crowd, a scene unfolded so shocking that it froze time for those who saw it. Emma Williams, the quietest girl in school, stood trembling as her uniform hung in tatters, the fabric ripped deliberately in front of everyone. Gasps spread like wildfire, whispers slicing through the air like knives. The group of girls standing beside her laughed, cold, cruel laughs that burned more than the humiliation itself. Emma's hands shook as she tried to cover herself, her face pale and her breathing ragged. She felt as though the entire world had swallowed her into a pit of shame. But what no one knew, not even the girls who had done it, was that the man sitting at the head of the hall, the one they thought was just a guest, was her father. And he owned the school. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and standing up for what's right, please pause for a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear this, and subscribe to Rapple of Hope. Your support helps us share more real, moving stories that inspire change. Emma had always been invisible. She walked the hallways like a shadow, careful not to draw attention, hiding her bright brown eyes under her long chestnut hair. Her father, Daniel Williams, had always respected her wish for a quiet, normal life. Although he was a successful entrepreneur and the sole owner of Ridgewood Academy, he kept their relationship a secret at Emma's request. She didn't want the privilege, the special treatment, or the whispers. She wanted to be seen for who she was, not for the fortune her family had. But high school can be cruel to the soft-spoken, and Emma's gentle nature made her a target for those who thrived on making others feel small. It started with little things, her books knocked out of her hands, cruel notes slipped into her locker, whispered insults she pretended not to hear. She endured it all in silence, believing that ignoring it was the only way to keep her dignity. But the ringleader, Madison Carter, saw her kindness as weakness. Madison was beautiful, popular, and merciless. She lived for attention, and anyone who didn't bow to her was an enemy to be humiliated. The day of the school assembly was supposed to be about celebrating academic excellence and community spirit. Emma had even won a quiet recognition for her volunteer work at a local shelter, though she had begged the principal not to announce it publicly. But Madison had other plans. When Emma walked in, Madison and her two closest friends smirked at each other. They had overheard Emma earlier telling a teacher she didn't like attention, and to Madison, that was an open invitation to make her the center of it. Halfway through the assembly, while the principal was addressing the students, Madison whispered something, and the girls beside her giggled. Then, as everyone stood to sing the school song, they moved behind Emma. In a moment so fast that the audience barely registered it until it was too late, Madison grabbed the hem of Emma's uniform blouse and yanked. The fabric tore loudly, the sound echoing in the silent hall like a gunshot. Emma froze, her cheeks flushing red, as her hands instinctively tried to hide the tear. But the damage was done, the laughter from the bullies had already poisoned the air, and snickers erupted from the back rows. Emma's heart pounded in her ears. She wanted to run, to disappear, but her legs wouldn't move. All she could hear was Madison's whisper, dripping with venom, "Oops." Up front, Daniel Williams had been watching, his sharp eyes missing nothing. The moment the fabric ripped, he felt a surge of anger so deep it took everything in him not to stand immediately and shout. But instead, he leaned forward, his jaw tightening. He needed to see how his daughter would handle this moment, even though every instinct told him to protect her. Emma finally sat down, keeping her head low, her hands clutching at the torn fabric. She barely heard the rest of the assembly, her mind spiraling into shame. That night, she cried in her room, her father knocking gently before coming in. He didn't ask who did it, he already knew. All he asked was, "Are you ready to let me help?" For the first time, Emma didn't say no. The next morning, the school buzzed with rumors. A special meeting had been announced. Students filed into the assembly hall again, unaware that everything was about to change. Madison was sitting in the front row with her friends, smiling smugly, as if yesterday's cruelty had been nothing more than a joke. But when the principal walked in followed by Daniel Williams, whom most students assumed was just a wealthy donor, the air shifted. Daniel took the stage, his voice calm but laced with authority. He spoke about respect, kindness, and the cost of cruelty. Then, without raising his voice, he revealed something that made the entire room gasp. I'm not just here as a guest. I am the owner of this school. And yesterday, I saw something that no student should ever have to endure. His gaze swept across the room, landing briefly on Madison, whose smirk faltered. He didn't name Emma at first. He didn't need to. The students already knew. But then he said something that made Emma's chest tighten. That girl is my daughter. And if you think her kindness is weakness, you are mistaken. Because it takes far more strength to stay gentle in a cruel world than it does to join the cruelty. The room was silent. Madison shifted uncomfortably. Daniel announced that there would be consequences, serious ones, for anyone caught bullying, and that the school would be launching a program to teach empathy and leadership. But beyond rules and punishment, he made it personal. From this day on, this will be a school where people lift each other up, not tear them down. Madison's eyes were on the floor. Emma, sitting quietly in the back, felt something she hadn't in months: pride. Not in her father's wealth, but in his courage to stand for what was right, and in herself for surviving it all without losing her heart. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs a reminder about kindness, and subscribe to Rapple of Hope. Your engagement helps us bring more stories of hope and change into the world. Before we end, tell us in the comments, what would you have done if you saw what happened to Emma? Your voice matters. If you want, I can now expand this into the full 6,000-word cinematic flow, adding more backstory for Emma, deeper scenes with the bullies, the emotional father-daughter bond, and a richly detailed redemption arc for Madison. That would give it the pacing and depth perfect for YouTube storytelling. Would you like me to do that next?